The rain in Amsterdam fell in a soft, persistent mist, silvering the canals and glazing the cobblestones of the Herengracht. Inside the tall, narrow house with its stark white facade, Leo van der Meer stared at the bank statement in his hands, the numbers blurring. His mother's elegant, looping handwriting on a note beside it read, "Investment dip, darling. All temporary. The party was a triumph." The scent of her perfume, Fréca, still hung in the study, cloying and floral over the older smell of leather and his father's pipe tobacco. His father, Willem, had been dead for 6 months. A sudden, brutal heart attack at his beloved oak desk in this very room. The pillar of the family, the respected notary, the quiet, solid man who had built a life of understated wealth and deep-rooted stability. Leo, at 28, had left his architectural practice in Rotterdam to handle the estate, to be the rock for his glamorous, socially voracious mother, Ilara. Ilara, 55 but preserved with the artistry of a museum conservator, floated through the grand rooms, a vision in cashmere and grief. "We must keep living, Leo," she'd say, her hand fluttering to her pearls. It's what he would have wanted, a little joy amidst the sorrow. Her little joy seemed to involve a relentless schedule of gallery openings, charity luncheons, and intimate dinners that were anything but intimate, filled with her newer, flashier friends from the art world. The financial discrepancies started small. A missing portfolio of conservative bonds, an unexplained withdrawal from a joint account. When Leo confronted her, her eyes, the color of North Sea ice, would widen with injured innocence. Oh, that. It was for the Klimt reproduction for the drawing room. And that weekend in Maastricht with the girls. Just harmless fun, Leo. Your father was so prudent, bless him. A little frivolity is medicinal. He wanted to believe her. The grief had hollowed him too, and the sight of her smiling again, however artificially, was a balm he mistook for healing. He buried his suspicions, attributing them to his own stress. He focused on the complex probate, on the mountain of paperwork his meticulous father had left behind. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon from a man named Stefan Dijkstra. His voice was gravelly, uncomfortable. "I worked with your father for 20 years. There are conversations he had with me before he died. About worry, about your mother's new circle. I think you should know." They met in a brown cafe near Central Station, the air thick with the smell of old beer and bitterballen. Stefan, a broad-faced man with kind, tired eyes, fidgeted with his beer glass. "Willem was troubled," he began. "Not by work, by her. He found emails, Leo, on their shared computer, between your mother and a man named Lars Visser. They were planning, not an affair or not just an affair. They were planning for Willem to be gone." Leo's blood turned to slurry in his veins. Gone? His heart was weak, yes, but the stress. Stefan looked down. The emails, they were cruel, mocking. They called him the Oak. Solid, boring, ready to fall. They detailed how she would exacerbate his anxieties, belittle him at parties, hint at financial incompetence, even flirt with Lars in front of him. She wrote it was harmless fun to watch him fluster, that it livened things up. Willem showed me a few. He was a proud man. He said he would handle it. A month later, he was dead. The world narrowed to the scarred wood of the table. The laughter from the bar, the clink of glasses, all receded into a distant roar. Leo saw it then, with horrific clarity. His father's increasingly strained smiles, his sudden tiredness, the way he'd retreat to his study after one of Ilara's playful jabs about his old-fashioned tastes. It wasn't illness alone. It was a campaign. "Lars Visser," Leo whispered. "An art dealer. Slick. Your mother met him at the Kunstdrive fair last year. He has a gallery on the Kaisersgracht and a reputation for cultivating wealthy clients." Leo thanked Stefan mechanically, walked out into the crisp autumn air. The gabled roof seemed to lean in, judgmental. He didn't go home. He walked for hours along the Amstel, past the Rijksmuseum, his mind a churn of images. His father teaching him to cycle on these very paths. His mother's laugh, like breaking crystal. The last time he saw his father, a quiet hug, the older man's whisper, "Take care of her, Leo." The ultimate betrayal, weaponizing that request. Revenge, cold and meticulous, began to take shape. It would not be violent. It would be structural. It would be the dismantling of the world she had built on his father's grave. He started with the finances, using his legal authority as executor to freeze and meticulously audit every account. He discovered the scale of the harmless fun. Hundreds of thousands of euros diverted, funneled into Lars's gallery as investments in dubious contemporary pieces, spent on extravagant trips to Paris and Gstaad. He said nothing, merely secured everything. He then began to visit Ilara's circle. He took her friend Margaret, a gossipy gallery owner, to lunch. He shared, with artful hesitation, his concern about mother's spending since meeting Lars, subtly framing it as exploitation of a vulnerable widow. He did the same with a board member of her favorite charity, and with the sharp-eyed wife of a former business associate of his father's. The narrative was seeded. Ilara, the grieving wife, being manipulated by a predatory charlatan. He visited Lars Visser's gallery. The man was exactly as pictured, polished, with a shark smile and eyes that assessed Leo's worth in a glance. Leo played the grieving, slightly naive son, interested in perhaps buying a piece for his mother's birthday. "She speaks so highly of your taste," Leo said, his tone dripping with false admiration. He asked about the investment potential of several pieces he knew, from his audit, his mother had already overpaid for. Lars, taking the bait, launched into a spiel about market trends, name-dropping artists of fleeting fame. "Mother said her investment in that triptych was your suggestion," Leo remarked innocently. "She called it a thrilling gamble, just harmless fun." Lars's smile tightened. Ilara has a wonderful spirit. She understands that art and life should be thrilling. Leo left, knowing the first pressure point. He anonymously sent detailed financial records of Lars' gallery, highlighting the inflated sales to Ilara van der Meer, to the Dutch Art Dealers Association, and a skeptical financial journalist at *het, Financiële Dagblad *. At home, the atmosphere curdled. Ilara's funds grew tight. The parties stopped. The deliveries from the finest florists and chocolatiers ceased. "Leo, what is happening?" she demanded, her composure cracking. "My cards are declined. The account is empty." "The estate is complex, Mother," he said, his voice a flat mirror of his father's calm tone. "There were debts, poor investments. We must be prudent now." He watched the confusion in her eyes twist into dawning fear. He served her tea in her favorite Wedgwood cup, his hand steady. The final piece required an actor. Leo hired one, a woman named Claudia with a cool, professional demeanor. She visited Lars's gallery, posing as a wealthy Belgian collector. She expressed passionate interest in the very triptych Ilara had bought. Over a series of meetings, she charmed Lars, flattering his expertise. She then secretly recorded, prompted him about his muses. Lars, eager to impress, boasted about his influence over a certain prominent widow, how he had liberated her taste and her purse. For her, it was a game. He chuckled on the recording. Harmless fun, shaking off her dull husband's shadow. For me, well, it's business. Leo received the files. The words were a sonic boom in his heart. Asterisk harmless fun. The same phrase, the final damning echo of his father's murder. He invited his mother for a walk in the Vondel Park. The trees were skeletal against a gray wool sky. He played the recording for her on his phone, watching her face. The color drained, leaving her expertly applied makeup a garish mask. Her breath hitched, a small, wounded animal sound. That's not... He's lying, she whispered. But her eyes held the terror of truth. Is it? Leo's voice was quiet, dead. Stefan Dijkstra showed me father's emails, the ones where you and Lars plotted to torment him, where you called it harmless fun. You didn't just break his heart, Mother. You broke it, and then you and your lover stood over him and laughed while he died. She crumpled onto a park bench. The performance was over. What remained was a hollow, frightened woman. I didn't mean... I never thought... You never thought about anything but your own boredom, Leo finished. Your fun. The revenge climax was not a confrontation, but an eviction. He had already, legally, transferred the Herrengracht house, his father's inheritance, predating the marriage, sold dear Ruxley into his name. He gave her a month. Lars, facing an investigation for fraud and a ruined reputation, fled to Monaco, cutting all ties. Alara's friends, armed with the sordid gossip Leo had nurtured, closed their doors. The final day was bitterly cold. A light snow dusted the canal. Alara stood in the grand hallway, a single suitcase at her feet. She looked old, the lines no longer disguised. Where will I go? She asked. The question not a plea, but a stunned realization. I've rented a small flat for you in Zalandam, Leo said, handing her the keys. The allowance is enough for a modest life. It's more than you left father with. She looked at him, and for a fleeting second, he saw the ghost of the mother who read him stories by the fire. You hate me. Leo looked past her, at the portrait of his father hanging in the study doorway. The kind, steady eyes. No, he said, and it was the truth. Hate was too warm, too alive. What he felt was a vast, frozen void where his family had once been. I just don't have a mother anymore. He closed the heavy door behind her. The silence of the house was absolute, broken only by the soft tick of his father's grandfather clock. He walked to the study, sat in his father's worn leather chair. The revenge was complete, a perfect, airless construct. He had exposed the truth, destroyed her world, and reclaimed his father's legacy. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the city, erasing footprints, covering everything in a pristine, silent white. He had won. And sitting alone in the deepening twilight, the chill seeping into his bones, Leo van der Meer began to understand that in building his prison for her, he had simply moved into his own.